Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, November 27th, 2019. Time for another show. We're doing the show live today. We are sticking with you while you are maybe preparing your Thanksgiving meal. I don't know. I hope so. And can I come over is the next question, I suppose. There's news happening, as it turns out. I've collected a few of those stories. Greg Dworkin has done the same. He'll share with you what he has got in his roundup. Daily Co's Radio being live now, of course, that means we've got our tweet all the way from Portland today. Bill listening in and letting everyone know. Carrying on a tradition dating back centuries. It's already false. Kagro X, that's me. David Walden reenacts the first Thanksgiving with finger puppets and a bottle of Jim Beam. Enjoy the show. He sure will. I only hope to record it for posterity because there's no way I'm going to remember it. With a full bottle here. And, well, you know, my finger puppets leave something to be desired. But maybe the Jim Beam will improve that a little bit too. All right. Let's see. Plenty to talk about today. Plenty to round up. Already thinking about what we're going to do with our Thursday and Friday shows. My hope is to get them all completed. I think I'm about halfway done with something for you to keep you company on Thursday. While you, maybe Thursday is the day you'll really be doing the prep work for Thanksgiving. Today may be the day you're doing your driving work, perhaps. All right. Let's see. We'll see if we can't point all these things in the right direction. Make sure everything is ready for your listening pleasure. I don't know what's going to happen for Friday, whether we're going to get a chance to put something together that's new, maybe pull out a classic episode for a rerun. We'll see. We'll see what happens, as the president might say. President babbling about a number of things today, so lots crossing the screen, lots that we may or may not get a chance to talk about it. Right now, Twitter seems obsessed with some things that might not ordinarily make our roundup. I just happen to have opened up the news. This is an interesting one. Who's tweeting this one around? Lots of people are. I happen to pick it up from Alec McGillis from ProPublica saying, whoa. That's Alex saying, whoa. It's not actually in the news report. New report finds that Indiana officials, quote here, quietly absolved Amazon of responsibility, unquote, for a warehouse worker's death in order to aid the state's bid for HQ2. I guess is that the second Amazon headquarters? I thought, I don't know, they still haven't settled where that was going to be. All right. Back in the day when I guess they thought that it might be in Indiana. Interesting, right? They absolved Amazon of responsibility for a warehouse worker's death in order to, I guess, promote the idea that Indiana was a hospitable place for the proposed HQ2. They deleted every fine levied and accepted the company's argument that the worker was to blame. What was the result of that, by the way? Did they get the HQ2? I don't think so. This is from the the Indy Star. Is that the Indianapolis Star or is it Indiana? Indiana Star. Indianapolis, right? Indy is Indianapolis, the city, not the state. So, all right. I'm not up to speed on the origins of the names of every newspaper in the country. But Indiana manipulated report on Amazon worker's death to lure HQ2, investigation says. Will Evans, the reporter on the byline here. What do we have here? Editor's note. The story was produced by Reveal from the Center for Investigative Reporting, a nonprofit news organization. Very interesting. Also worth noting as the traditional news model evolves here. And we'll just read at least the lead on this one since everybody's tweeting it around. It's rather unbelievable, isn't it? When an Amazon worker was killed by a forklift in a Plainfield warehouse in 2017, the state of Indiana's investigator found the company was at fault. The state cited Amazon for 4 major safety violations and fined it $28,000. Well, that just about closed him down, I'm sure. But an investigation by Reveal from the Center for Investigative Reporting has found that as Governor Eric Holcomb sought to lure Amazon's HQ2 to Indiana, state labor officials quietly absolved Amazon of responsibility. After Amazon appealed, they deleted every fine that had been levied and accepted the company's argument that the Amazon worker was to blame. He threw himself, I guess, in front of this forklift. The investigator on the case, John Stallone, had arrived at the warehouse a day after 59-year-old Philip Lee Terry was crushed to death. He was so troubled by the pushback he was getting from higher-ups that he secretly recorded his boss, Indiana OSHA Director Julie Alexander, as she counseled the company on how to lessen the fine. Wow. It's like being at a card table and having a dealer teach you how to count cards, Stallone said. He said pressure to back off came from as high up as the governor's mansion. The governor's office and Indiana labor officials declined interviews. In statements, they both called Stallone's account false. Wow. So there's considerably more to the story, of course. Not, I don't know. I mean, if it's something we want to spend some more time on, we certainly can. But I just wanted to alert you to the fact that the story exists. It's out there. I'll share it with you in today's roundup, or I will ask Scott to share it with you, and then he'll do so, and then I'll share the roundup with you later on, and you can read along with the story. There's a lot more to it. It's a very lengthy, not tremendously lengthy, but lengthy enough story that you might want to go over it yourself. But I want you to be aware that that one's happening. That seems like the sort of thing that I would be remiss if I did not at least mention, not just because it's a hot story being shared, but because it's disconcerting, to say the very least. So keep an eye on that one. Plenty of other things happening here, too. And I am not sure yet whether we will hear from Joan today. There's no hearings going on, no impeachment hearings, I don't think, unless they're surprising us with one happening today. So she may be able to break away. However, vacation schedules being what they are, we'll see whether she's wrapped up in Thanksgiving preparations or covering for someone else who is. Greg Dworkin is with us, and I believe all the masonry work is done at last. Is that right?
Yeah,
morning,
pretty
Greg.
much.
Okay, very good. Let's go out for a walk on the walk.
It's lovely. So, yeah, it's a little chilly out today. It's just hitting 40,
Yes,
but
okay.
still a little chilly. So a lot going on. People are sort of pulling back a little bit from politics, getting ready for Thanksgiving tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But the big story for this week so far has been the slew of impeachment polling that has come out post end of Democratic televised hearings by the Select Committee, but handing it over to Judiciary, where Jerry Nadler will then put together articles of impeachment. That's basically the schedule. And the polling is interesting because, the storyline that the Republicans are pushing is, oh, well, this impeachment stuff is really bad for Democrats and good for Trump. Trump himself said, at least you should see the polling, 70% hate it and 25% like it, and so I'm really winning. But I gave you a graphic from 538 that helps to summarize this. Just prior to the hearings, what really happened, to step back, is once Pelosi declared that Democrats were for impeachment, the numbers radically changed from 47% don't support, 45% support, to 49-43 do support. And that 49-43 kind of waned a little bit. Right before the impeachment hearings, it was almost tied, 46-45. But do impeach had always been just a tad greater than don't do it. And now it's basically 49-44. So it's for support of impeachment. And the idea that somehow the hearings have been good for Trump is simply not recognized by the new polls.
Yes,
it's just not. Okay, so as an example, the position that people are in right now is really interesting when you actually deep dive into the polls, what you find is most people believe Trump did something wrong.
Yes.
There's some doubt as to whether or not they want him removed because of that wrong that he did. But there's no question that people agree that, gee, he really did something wrong. And actually, something like 70% of the population wants Trump to participate fully in the investigations. So his stonewalling doesn't really resonate with the public. He does it anyway. I mean, he sort of has no choice, because if he actually admitted what was going on, that would be bad for him, so he's therefore not going to do it. I mean, it's pretty much that simple.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well,
all right. So if you look, for example, Morning Consult, do you support impeachment inquiry 48-43, impeaching Trump 50-41, removing Trump 50-42? But more people actually support the impeachment and removing Trump than support the impeachment inquiry itself, which just gives you an idea of what's it like when you actually look at the margin of error stuff there. So it's basically the same. And the CNN poll, overall support for impeaching and removing Trump is at 50-43, with support among registered voters at 50-45. The more enthusiastic about voting you are, the less you support impeachment. Extremely enthusiastic about voting, 48-49. Less enthusiastic about voting, 52-40. So people really would prefer to tune out and not really pay attention to politics. We always get reminded of that. Just because we're political junkies, most people are not like that. But what's fascinating about the CNN poll is that there's a 40% gender gap with regards to impeachment.
Okay.
Men oppose impeaching, 40-53. Women favor it, 61-34.
Okay.
Which is pretty remarkable. So, again, a reminder, women are the resistance. The resistance are women. And women tend to vote. And so that's all good.
Yes. I mean, yeah.
They
do tend to vote. In fact, they voted for 100 years. That's another issue.
Trump just can't understand why the centennial is only now. It must be because he's making America great again, and only he could do it, right? But, still.
I don't think he knows what that means.
What Knipyak says is voter opinion on impeachment will be difficult to move, as 86% say their mind is made up and only 13% say they might change their mind. But that 13% is significant. Again, we're talking about close elections. And so when people say, oh, well, 85% of the public is already fixed in their mind and 15% means that they could change it, 50% is an enormous number in a close election. Among those who think the president should be impeached and removed from office, 8% say they might change their mind. Among those who think the president should not be impeached and removed from office, 17% say they might change their mind. I like those numbers.
Okay.
And while half the public, 50%, think that the impeachment inquiry is a legitimate investigation, 43% think it's a political witch hunt. Fine. That matches his 43% approval. Nonetheless, 76% of American voters think the Trump administration should fully cooperate. And 18% don't think so. So when he doesn't cooperate, that's a factor. American voters are paying attention to the news about impeachment. 59% say they're paying a lot of attention. 27% say they're paying some. And nearly half of American voters, 49%, believe the president held up military aid to Ukraine because he wanted the Ukrainian president to announce investigations that would benefit Trump politically. And 40% don't believe that. So 49-40, that means that half the public understands what he did and 40% won't acknowledge it.
Yeah, they may well
It's interesting.
understand
It's interesting because sometimes the facts actually force you to acknowledge it. Then you have to turn to, okay, he did it, but I don't really care. But that's a different issue.
True. Yes, well, and I assume has lower numbers as well. But we
Right.
don't know. They don't ask people that. Are you lying? They never ask anybody that one. But
Right. So anyway,
what you get,
these
no.
things take time. I mean, I said early in the week, I think it's going to take until next week. People have to talk about it over Thanksgiving, let this stuff sift in. You have to keep seeing headline after headline after headline. For example, some of the morning headlines today and yesterday, White House budget officials said 2 aides resigned amid the Ukraine aid freeze. Mm-hmm. Of course, the trouble with a resignation in protest or in conscience is it doesn't do much good if you don't announce it. So the fact that it's hidden doesn't really do much.
Yes.
But nonetheless, when you read the headlines or when you just hear it over and over and over again, the way adults learn is by repetition, things sink in. So I'd be most interested in seeing what the polls look like next week. Not so much this week. Again, I don't expect sharp breaks, but it doesn't need to be sharp breaks. The numbers are already bad for Trump. They need to stay where they are or just go up a little bit. On the other hand, does that mean that the Republicans in Congress will vote for impeachment? Probably not. They're basically looking out for themselves and their jobs. It's not just their jobs in terms of, where they are right now in Congress and not wanting to be primaried. It's the jobs afterwards. A lot of these are relatively young people, 50s, 60s, still think that they're going to work after they get out of Congress, and they want to be hired by Republican-leaning firms who hire them based on their Republican credentials. So it's not reasonable to say, oh, well, this guy's retiring. He'll probably just be honest from now on. Not if he wants a job afterwards.
I guess that's true.
We used to call it wingnut welfare. It still exists, and it really drives how people think because they want to get hired and get those cushy jobs.
Yeah. When are we going to replace those jobs with robots and drones?
I don't know. Well, the drones, I think, it's easy. The robots, I'm not so sure. I don't think they want those jobs. But, that's the background in terms of what's going on with impeachment. So, yeah, it's still a big issue. Trump's going to get impeached. Most of the public is okay with that, even if it's small amounts. And no, things are not swinging Trump's way at all.
No.
A lot of the so-called movement toward Trump that people report, just about anything, whether it's job approval or whether it's impeachment, is generally noise. It's just a noisy signal. It bounces up and down a little bit. And again, you can see that most clearly by looking at the 538 data. Then we have the Democrats, and the Democrats are still trying to figure out who to vote for.
Oh, yes, right. We have to make that decision, don't we? All right.
And they have it. 4 national polls so far this week, says Bill Sherm, Morning Consult, Quinnipiac, Survey USA, CNN, the average of the 4. Biden 28.5, Sanders 17, Warren 14.75, Buttigieg 12. So Mayor Pete has vaulted up into the top 4. Basically, Sanders doesn't move. Warren is dropping. Biden doesn't move. Buttigieg is going up. That's basically what's going on. And when you look for where Mike Bloomberg is,
yes, where is he?
Basically, he's a 3%er.
Oh,
it's unfortunate that Harris at 4, Yang at 2.8. These are Nate Silver's numbers, national polling averages. Okay. Bloomberg at 2.4, Klobuchar at 2.1, Gabbard at 1.7, Booker 1.6, Castro 1, Steyer 1. The thing is, Booker, Klobuchar, and Castro, in my view, deserve better.
Yeah.
Yang and Bloomberg and Steyer and Gabbard deserve worse.
Okay, I'm with you there. It's surprising that they have. But I mean, at those low numbers, the noise is higher, I guess. But yeah, they do. I mean,
Castro has not caught on. He has possibly the best, progressive agenda of any of them, arguably. Booker is a really appealing candidate who just hasn't caught on. Klobuchar is the moderate that everybody wants Joe Biden to be. She hasn't really caught on either. And why Yang and why Gabbard get support is all I can say is, people, especially voters, are weird.
Okay. Yes, that's true. I can't really understand why,
But skipping that,
continues. Yes,
and looking at the top 4, it's impossible to figure out who's really on top. I mean, Biden certainly leads nationally, but that doesn't matter. Everybody knows it's how you do in the states. If you look at a state like New Hampshire, I think there have been 5 polls in the last week, and 4 candidates, depending upon the poll, are leading.
Oh,
meaning nobody's really made up their mind. And if you look to see, well, am I solid for this person? About 2/3 say that I could change their mind still. They're not really sure. So it's very much in flux. I personally think that, and Dave Hopkins was writing about this, political scientist, in terms of perception. Sometimes perception is reality. The perception, the narrative, is that Warren's support for Medicare for all has hurt her. And so she's dropped in the polls because of it. And that's sort of true. It's not that Medicare for all is unpopular. It's not that it's popular. People usually have different ideas in their head about what that means when they say it. But she's been very specific about how she would pay for it. And of course, the media attacks anybody who's specific. If they're not specific, then they say you're being vague. And then if you're specific, then they say, oh, yeah, but look what's wrong with this, and this, which is why everybody tends to be vague. So, she's paying the penalty for being honest. That's fine. That's politics. That normally happens. Yes. And vetting where you're at is a good thing on the whole. But whether that's the reason it becomes self-fulfilling or whether there's some other reason, the fact of the matter is Warren peaked and now she's dropping. And the Real Clear Politics graph that's post that I gave you, I think that's like the first or second thing in the roundup today that I sent you, pretty clearly shows that Warren had a moment where she tied Biden and then dropped back down.
Yeah, yes. And
now she's tied with Bernie. Bernie basically hasn't moved. Biden hasn't moved. Mayor Pete's making a bit of a movement, but still below the top three, and everybody else is sort of stuck.
Yeah. Well, so the upper echelons are filled with people who haven't moved, and the lower echelons are filled with people who are stuck. It's very inspiring.
Well, some people have their moment, like Harris went up and down.
Yes.
So she wasn't stuck. True. She just went up and then went down. And so does that mean she can go back up again? Again, everything is so much in flux. You have to go back to, Gephardt and Dean leading Iowa until Kerry won to remember that really it's the month before the primary that stuff really matters. So that'll be January, and then it'll be impeachment stuff going on at the time. Yeah, I'm just trying to make the point that it's not really predictable at this particular point in time. People have to recognize everything is still in flux. Nobody is leading and the leading contender. There are a pack of leading contenders, any one of which who might win. I have my suspicions for who won't. But, really it's up to the voters, and the voters just haven't decided yet. Okay.
Well, if they want to keep going first, they're going to have to make up their minds earlier.
Yeah, well, we also have to make up our mind about Iowa and New Hampshire not going first, but that's another story for another day, and certainly for another round. For this round, they are.
Okay. Yes.
Meanwhile, we have the specter of Mike Pompeo, remember, who at one point was like CIA director and should know better.
Yes.
Still pushing Trump's Ukrainian conspiracy theories. He says the U.S. and Ukraine should investigate Trump's baseless conspiracy theory about Ukrainian election interference. And John Neely Kennedy flirts with it, too. He was quoted as saying, well, of course, nobody really knows whether Ukraine hacked the DNC servers. And then he had to backtrack and say, no, I misheard the question. I thought they were asking about election interference. Of course, Russia hacked the servers. And then he had to add, but really, as far as meddling in the election, could have been Ukraine, could have been a lot of other people besides Russia. So, the Republicans are going all in on trying to muddy the waters, because the alternative would be to say, okay, this is really bad. We did this, and you should vote us out of power because we're feckless and we don't really support America over Russia. They don't want to say that. So
Chuck Carlson does. This. Yeah, that is. I've had that in the back of my mind. Pompeo was the CIA director, but I guess it needs to be explicitly said. Was he CIA director when, for instance, I know they reject the findings, but was he CIA director when the entire American intelligence community unanimously said, nah, the answer is Russia did it?
I think so.
So what was he doing?
But even if he wasn't the day that the report came out, everybody in his agency thinks so.
Yes.
And he was well involved with security issues prior to being, at CIA in that setting. So, there's no way he doesn't know. He's just flat out lying.
I think that's pretty clear. It's just how egregious is it? But okay, it's egregious enough. He knows the answer. But it really would be something if he were CIA director and handed over, the report. Although I guess
Greg Sargent has a nice column about that. So I just think it's, facts are stubborn things, and no matter how much they try to evade it, sooner or later the facts wind up catching up to you. So even as Secretary of State right now, he's certainly well aware of what those findings are.
Yes. Okay. He knows this.
Right.
Speaking of rooting for Russia, I understand that Tucker Carlson is doing that openly.
Yeah, why shouldn't you root for Russia? Why,
Yeah. And you tell me why not?
I mean, it's nice that one of the things you scratch your head and say, gee, it's really frustrating that all of this impeachment hearings and facts, Mueller report, et cetera, doesn't move the needle. Actually, it does. It forces these guys out into the open, so they just have to say out loud the stuff that they sort of believe privately that's driving them.
Yeah.
And that's a help. It's a long-term help. And it doesn't necessarily get the stuff you need. But, you have people on Fox actually attacking Carlson for saying stuff like that. So it's a different time slot, and the same people don't see it. But eventually this stuff works its way through.
Yeah. Well, it is getting some notice, and I understand. I see now somebody at least is reporting that he's had to walk it back somehow, and I don't know how he did it, but I'm sure unconvincing. It did strike me as odd. He basically said at minimum he doesn't care who wins as between Russia and Ukraine, and that did strike me as odd too, because I maybe I'm naive, but I always thought that they gave evening news analysis talk shows to people who tragically cared about things that the rest of America didn't, and the job was to get us to care about them. And I guess that's just one he doesn't care about.
Right. Here's a piece from Yahoo, The Birth of a Trumpist, how Elise Stefanik became one of the president's most ferocious supporters. The thing that surprised everybody is that during the actual hearings behind closed doors where they were asking questions, she was solicitous and polite to people like Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. And it was only in public later that she wound up attacking him viciously. And so that's why people were scratching their heads and say, what? Where did that come from?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, that is telling as well. And by the way, you could pocket that story for an explanation as to when the Republicans were complaining. When are we going to have public hearings? These behind closed doors
depositions. This is what they were complaining about. We didn't have a chance to grandstand.
Right, exactly. And so, and that was the explanation that was given at the time. You want to do this stuff seriously and get real answers, you got to do it behind closed doors first.
Yeah, by the way, Jim Jordan's jacket has a Twitter account, the one he doesn't wear.
Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I think we may have had the last second or so of that information cut off at the intro to the break. You were telling me Jim Jordan's jacket has its own
Jonathan
Twitter
Bernstein
account.
had a nice piece this morning, just pre-Thanksgiving summing up.
Yes.
Called 11 Things for Political Junkies to Be Thankful For. Our current politics may be miserable, but there's plenty of comic relief if you know where to look for it. And one of the things he mentions is the stupid joke Twitter accounts. Like Devin Nunes' cow, for example.
Right.
But Representative Jim Jordan has an abandoned jacket, and it has its own account, Jim Jordan has left the hearing room, and the jacket will say something like, I really hope he comes to the office and picks me up and doesn't forget about me.
Yes.
Because, it's just one of those things. In fact, remember that Onion article that had him with a picture of bare-chested but a tie, saying Jim Jordan is moving the casual look even further.
Yeah, all right. He just doesn't like to be encumbered, is all.
Right.
Yeah, the jacket feels left out of all the historical happenings that are going on, and who knows what may be stored in the pockets there. You don't want to leave it lying around. Do you have? I don't see the article about all the funny things. Is there a roundup entry there?
Oh, sure. I'll give that to you.
People may want funny things, and I want them to be able to have the proper reference materials.
Well,
Take all the humor
it's
out
funny
of
to
it.
a political scientist. Like,
Yes, right.
for example, C-SPAN is funny because what happens with C-SPAN is that after
those
people have made their
independents.
speech, they leave the sound on.
Yes.
So you get that ambient sound. You occasionally overhear people talking, and they don't realize the microphone is still on.
Okay. Yeah,
Right.
I've heard that, and I haven't heard that from callers yet, though. That'd be interesting to hear what goes on in the life of a C-SPAN caller when they think you're not listening.
Right. So anyway, they have wacky candidates, and they have cable news stunts. It reminds us of the time that CNN beamed Will.i.am into its studio via hologram for a live interview during election night coverage. Some of the other bizarre things that they do that really seem dated and
Yes.
you actually did that. Yeah, they actually did that.
Oh, okay. Well, I wouldn't have remembered that one. Snap
Right.
polling.
And then
instance, I remember
election
that.
day in the movies and on TV.
Okay.
Because sometimes the coverage is kind of even more interesting than the actual election. So,
right,
different
we'll take
people
a
have
look.
different things that they are pleased about. Again, you go back and look as far as a political junkie goes and say, gee, there's like 44 candidates at one point or another who said they were going to run on the Democratic side. At least we're down to about 12 or 13 now. We have people
40?
who you scratch your head and say, I don't get it, like Mike Bloomberg and Deval Patrick. Not that, they don't have a rationale for running, but why they do it now and why they decide coming in late is a good idea and why they decide skipping the first bunch of states is fine, the way Rudy Giuliani did. And we know how that worked out when he was running for president.
Yes.
Oh, and by the way, do you remember when Rudy Giuliani was running for president?
Barely, but he wasn't Rudy Colludi yet. He was
Oh,
America's
yeah, he
mayor
was.
back
He's always
then.
been.
Oh, well, I guess you could argue that. We hadn't
He's
hung that
always
label
been
on.
America's Colludi. It's just that, people saw him in a different way because there was a good narrative for
True.
wanting to.
Right. He used to be colluding with Motorola for bad radios for the fire department, for
Well,
instance.
he used to be colluding with law and order folks to really, in many, many different ways, stick it to people in New York.
Yeah, that's true.
That's not something people will forget.
Good point. Okay, especially not in New York. Yeah. All right. Well, that didn't work out all that well for him. Although I guess now what if the late entrants in the Democratic side said I entered late in protest of New Hampshire and Iowa's unfair advantage in always going first? That would be
That would be most interesting, especially if you couple that with, and just to make sure that you understand, I am totally with the Democrats on this. I was a Republican, and I really supported Pat Toomey in the last election.
Yes, well, that might not work very well. But it
That
would
might
be an
be a problem.
opportunity to do something. I mean, maybe Deval Patrick could make it work somehow, but I don't know. There's probably a better candidate for that, too. But say, I'm not even going to compete in those states. And so I'm free to say that it's terrible that they go first all the time and unrepresentative, and we ought to be moving it, and then he won't have to face back. Some candidate would then not have to face that backlash, although, I don't know, whatever. It's
hard
not a great
to
strategy.
know exactly what Deval Patrick is thinking.
Yes.
You have to wonder whether or not this is all a campaign to get a raise and a promotion at Bain.
I guess, although, I don't know, can you get a raise out of Bain? Do you think that they should be tighter with their money, you would think?
You'd
tight
think,
with
but
everybody else's.
if you say, listen, I'm even more valuable because not only am I an ex-politician with a lot of connections, I actually was a presidential candidate, so even more so whatever it is I was telling you, I could do more of.
Yeah, I guess so. Although at this point I would say...
Because what other rationale is there?
Right. I don't know. I can't think of another one. Although if
And
they're
why
smart...
now?
Yeah. If they're smart financial analysts over there, you would say the market is flooded with presidential candidates. I don't need you. I can get another one. But, all right. Well, yeah, I'm not sure. I did see the theory floated for Mike Bloomberg. Somebody, I don't think they were serious about it, but it was an interesting thought that he wasn't seriously entertaining the idea that he was going to secure the nomination, but rather that since he was rolling out this enormous advertising campaign attacking Trump, that he could get better rates for the ads if he claimed to be running for president at the time. And that's true. You can actually do that. I mean, I think he envisions himself as actually being president, but it was a good thought. And that would be cool strategically if we found out that that was it. It would ironically, it would make me respect him more and consider him for president.
The thing that struck me even more likely is that he decided to run as a Stop Elizabeth Warren movement.
Yeah.
And then had no plan B for when it turns out Warren isn't the front runner anymore.
What am I going to do now? All right, fine.
Well, now I'm stuck. I mean, I said I was going to do this or that or something. Well, I guess, it's pocket change anyway. Just go all in.
Right, sure. There's always somebody else. There's another socialist around here somewhere, and I shouldn't say.
Well, there's always Bernie, but Bernie isn't the hot topic that he was 4 years ago. And so, what do you do with that?
Yeah.
Nobody's saying I got to jump in this race now because Bernie might win.
People are not saying that. That is true.
No, I mean Bernie might win, but people aren't saying that.
Right.
But they are saying, well, at least a month ago they were saying I better jump in because Elizabeth Warren might win.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, that could be it. That's I would guess a more likely reason to go through with running for president.
But, a month is a lifetime in politics. Look where he is now. So what's his rationale going to be? I have to jump in because Tom Steyer might win?
Yes.
I need to outspend him?
That's a possibility. I guess that's, I don't know. Or maybe he's just doing the hokey pokey. He'll jump in, jump out, jump in, shake it all about a little bit.
Well, that's what it's all about. Right?
Yes.
So, I don't know. I really don't know.
That's what people say.
And I think, it's fair to step back and say at some point, you really can't analyze where things stand because it's just so much in flux and so many people haven't made up their minds. Anything definitive is going to turn out by next week to be just different.
Yes. Okay.
That's the message. So, you know what? Pre-Thanksgiving, that's about all I have to say today. I think that people are just pulling back. They're leaving Washington. There's not as much news. The polls are the polls. We're going to take a Thanksgiving break. We'll be back. At least I'll be back on Monday, and then we'll try to figure out where things stand.
All right. That'll be the right time to try to figure that out. So we'll schedule that for Monday, and I appreciate it. All right.
I don't. Did you ever have a preferred candidate at this point?
Ever?
No, I mean in the Democratic primary right now. Do you have somebody?
I have one now.
I really wish it would be this person.
I don't. No, I would like to get that money from Andrew Yang, but I don't want him to be president.
Yeah.
No, I don't have a preferred candidate really at this point.
I think you're like a lot of Democrats who have great interest in this. It's not like you're not paying attention.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's still too early.
Yes, and also, I never like the idea, and I always feel like I'll feel foolish if I throw all my support behind somebody and just say, well, I'll just die if they don't win. And then they don't win. And then what am I going to do? I know I'm going to have to accept somebody else eventually. Yeah, I guess so. But I don't know. It never really interested me. And I usually don't have a choice by the time my primaries roll around, or at least not very much of a choice. I have, I've had people I favor. I mean, I don't favor Tulsi Gabbard, and I favor all the other ones. But no, there's not. I don't know. I don't follow it that closely because I prefer to be able to have 5 people that I like and would accept as president, and we'll see which ones are left if I get a chance to vote in this. I don't know. This doesn't do it for me. Primaries.
Yep.
I always figure that the people who are that serious, I think, I view as job seekers. That's not the case with the vast majority of them, the millions and millions of people who are supporters of various presidential candidates. But, no. Sorry. The answer is no. So that was a long one.
I can take no for an answer.
Okay. Well, good.
All right. So anyway, I'll sign off, and then I'll talk to you on Monday, and we'll see what's going on.
All right. We'll check in again then. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Okay. Take care. Try not to get into too many arguments with your relatives.
Why not? Okay. I will try that. I'm just practicing now.
Yeah, okay.
I appreciate it. I don't think I'm going to get into too many.
If you want to practice, it's more like, shut up, why not?
Yeah, right. And another thing, Vonnegut. Okay. Appreciate it. We'll check in with you afterwards. Tell us about everything you've eaten and talk to you then. Great.
Yep.
Thanks,
We'll
Greg.
do a weight check. Take care.
You too. By the way, yes, Joan McCarter confirms her plans to be here, so that's good news. And we'll get the word on what is being eaten in Idaho, besides potatoes, of course, and whether or not there are turkeys wandering down the street out there. I have seen lately a lot of videos on YouTube. This is a very important point politically. A lot of videos on YouTube of turkeys aggressively approaching, pestering, pecking, bothering people. I don't know whether we have too many turkeys, too many video cameras. I'm not sure which one is the problem here. But wild turkeys, well, they're wild for a reason, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot contain their, I don't know what, their turkey-ish spirit. I don't know. I feel bad about all this. No videos of anybody shooting them and eating them, though. That's good news, and I don't know whether you're allowed to put that up on YouTube anyway, but just for the record, I see you out there, turkeys, and as a matter of fact, a turkey could be my preferred candidate for high public office at this point if they just adopt the right position on, I don't know what, we'll say stuffing for all, and then we'll be on the right track. Okay, let's see. Other items worth mention today. Haven't even gotten to the pocket yet, but I do see the LOL GOP tweet noting, you may not believe this, but I remember when the right was against guys who threatened to kill the troops, in reference, of course, as you could probably tell immediately, to the tweet from Olga Lautman, an investigative journalist, who tweets about Navy Chief Petty Officer Gallagher, who recently received his pardon from the President of the United States. Gallagher threatened to kill his Navy SEAL teammates if they spoke about his war crime. Don't forget that. An important part of a complete breakfast, for one thing, which is always what you say after you say an important part of. An important part of the equation in figuring out whether or not, for instance, this was the right thing to do for Gallagher. I did think it was a pretty serious risk. Everyone noted the risk that his team members had taken in testifying against him, and the testimony was pretty compelling. I mean, they convicted him, right? Or at least one of the charges. We did read the other day that from Spencer Ackerman. I guess he was convicted on fewer charges than I had originally thought was the case. That was an important point in all of this. But I was surprised to learn that, for one thing. But yeah, the other SEALs had to take enormous risk in testifying against him for various reasons, not the least of which is that he threatened to kill them. And of course, remember, he's on trial for murder. He's there, and teammates are testifying against him because he seemed to be entirely without control or conscience when it came to murdering at will. And the idea of returning him to the ranks, particularly among the people who believed he was an out-of-control murderer and testified to doing things like, as they said, tampering with the optics on his sniper rifle so that his shots would miss, so that he wouldn't be able to just simply reliably murder people for fun. That's not a guy, you want to come back with a grudge. So, interesting tweet from Olga Lautman here. Gallagher threatened to kill his Navy SEAL teammates if they spoke about his war crime. This is who Donald Trump is taking on the campaign trail. Never mind bragging what a wonderful guy he is. Sickening. And includes the report to back that up from the San Diego Union Tribune. Navy judge says SEAL charged with war crimes threatened to kill teammates. It's all there in the headline. So I'll share that with you. I retweeted that one around, too, by the way, for many of you to take a look at. And I guess several of you have. I see it recirculating as we speak. All right. Let me check in here with what's lying around at the top of Pocket. So, oh, yes, right. We covered the the Amazon story. Here's a new story, and maybe something that we could, maybe I'll hold that one and we'll discuss that perhaps with Joan when she comes on, if her agenda isn't entirely full as it is. Let's see. I guess always room for a Trump is a liar and cheater story. This one here from the Daily Beast. Jamie Ross, the reporter, new Trump Tower tax and loan documents show significant inconsistencies, according to ProPublica. Newly unearthed tax and loan documents appear to show that Donald Trump's business reported wildly conflicting occupancy rates for a Trump Tower in Manhattan, depending on who the intended audience was. This, I think, fits in with the narrative that was cemented a long time ago, that Trump tells different tales when he is being assessed for taxes. He lowers the value that he reports of his property so that he's taxed at a lower rate. And when he's looking to either sell condos to people at inflated prices or pick up a loan from a bank or some other source, he inflates the value of his properties so that he can borrow more against them. So let's see. ProPublica obtained documents that appear to show the president's business reported a high occupancy rate to lenders, but a lower rate to unofficial tax filings. For example, in June of 2012, some specifics here, Trump's business told a lender that 99% of the tower's commercial space was occupied. But in tax filings in the same year, it said the building's occupancy rate was 83%. That is slightly different. That 16 percentage point gap between the loan and tax filings is a, quote, very significant difference, according to Susan Mancuso, an attorney who specializes in New York property tax. Showing a high occupancy rate to lenders in 2012 may have helped Trump refinance his share of Trump Tower that year, when he reportedly got a $100 million loan on good terms. A spokesperson for the Trump Organization said that comparing the various reports is comparing apples to oranges. It's really not. They're supposed to be the same numbers, and you should not be thinking of them as apples and oranges, but rather as, I guess, two apples or I suppose two or more oranges. Interesting. All right, I guess they think they can get away with that, not only misreporting things, but mischaracterizing them as somehow as apples and oranges. But an old trick of his, and one we've seen in a number of contexts, but reconfirmed once again by ProPublica. So let's see. Other interesting bits and pieces of news that are of some value here. Let's just throw in another short one here. Speaking as we were recently of Mike Bloomberg, Lachlan Markay, also in the Daily Beast, reporting Bloomberg's 2020 pollster has dumped his Ukrainian oligarch client, which is, you could count that as good news. It's always good news, I think, to dump Ukrainian oligarch clients generally. But it's not that good, the news, because, of course, one, we're talking about him dumping a Ukrainian oligarch in order to make room for polling for Mike Bloomberg, and two, the person doing the dumping of the Ukrainian oligarch is Doug Schoen. So that's, you just never want to hear about him doing anything, quite frankly, unless it's, I don't know, stubbing his toe or something equally, well, it's like mildly disturbing for him. We don't need him to fall off a cliff or anything. Just bang his toe into something hard. I can support that. Doug Schoen has stopped repping billionaire investor Victor Pinchuk. Have you heard his name before? Maybe. Anyway, stopped repping Pinchuk after his other client, another billionaire, announced his run for the presidency. That, of course, is Mike Bloomberg. Bloomberg's presidential pollster has ended his years-long representation of a Ukrainian oligarch, briefly scrutinized by U.S. law enforcement during its investigation into Russian election meddling. That's interesting, too. So U.S. law enforcement at some point investigating Russian election meddling did say, let's take a look at some of these Ukrainians after all. and came away with the conclusion that, no, I guess there was nothing there. Which I guess motivated Doug Schoen to say, I'll represent that guy. But if he's a pollster for Bloomberg, what is he doing for Pinchuk? Not polling, right? Just sort of general lobbying, consulting. Oh, let's see if Lachlan Markay knows and tells us. Pollster and pundit, believe it or not, Doug Schoen told the Daily Beast on Tuesday that he has signed on to work on the former New York mayor's 2020 Democratic presidential bid. In anticipation of that role, he said he terminated a contract with billionaire investor Victor Pinchuk because reasons, I guess. Well, no one. It's a particularly bad time, I think, to be involved with Ukrainian oligarchs. I mean, it's never really a good idea. But I guess if you're running or an important consultant for a Democratic candidate, there's 20 candidates, even if there were somewhat fewer. The other candidates will point at that and try to use it against you. So sure, why not? As soon as Mayor Bloomberg made it clear that he would be formally announcing his candidacy, Schoen said via text, I terminated my professional relationship with Mr. Pinchuk and filed the Foreign Agents Registration Act termination you referenced. So it wasn't that he proactively went out and told people. I guess the reporters caught on. They saw the FARA termination being filed and said, oh, there's a story here. Schoen's work with Bloomberg predated his formal launch this past Sunday. An aide to the one-time mayor said that Schoen had done polling for them in anticipation of a presidential announcement. In addition to his 3 successful mayoral runs, Schoen did not answer directly when he'd dropped any other clients. I'm sorry, he didn't answer directly when asked if he'd dropped any other clients in anticipation of Bloomberg's White House run, or whether he felt that Pinchuk represented any unique political liability. My central focus is and will be Mayor Bloomberg's campaign. I'm doing that happily, willingly. Lots of, garbage that we don't have to pay attention to that he says in his statement. Schoen's FARA filing, which he submitted to the Justice Department on Friday, disclosed about $324,000 in consulting fees and expenses paid by Pinchuk's East One Group. That's the name of his business, I guess, during the 6 months ending on October 31st. Schoen was sure to note that he had informed DOJ that his contract with Pinchuk had ended before he was legally required to do so. What a good boy. Yeah, I don't think that's all that important. The termination came 8 years, almost to the day, after Schoen first registered to represent Pinchuk's interest in the United States. Since then, the Ukrainian financer, it says financer, not financier, has turned up on the periphery of political disputes surrounding foreign meddling in the U.S. political process. Special counsel Robert Mueller briefly probed Pinchuk's 2015 payment to the Donald J. Trump Foundation. This must be where we heard it before. For a televised speech that Trump gave at the Ukrainians' annual Yalta European Strategy Conference. Pinchuk was never accused of or implicated in any wrongdoing, and he was not even mentioned in Mueller's final report on the investigation. Schoen, however, testified at trial that it was the trial of lobbyist and former Obama White House lawyer Greg Craig. Remember that he was on trial for, I do remember that he was. Barely remember what it was about. But it was over his belatedly disclosed work on behalf of a Russia-friendly Ukrainian political party in 2012. Schoen said that he had arranged for Craig's work in the country alongside the imprisoned former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort. Craig was acquitted of criminal charges earlier this year. That work, Schoen said, was partially financed by Pinchuk. Pinchuk's name has also surfaced in the context of the ongoing impeachment inquiry against Donald Trump. I don't recall that happening, but I haven't seen every minute of things here. 2 years after Trump's 2015 speech, Rudy Giuliani, who now serves as the president's personal attorney, traveled to Kyiv to address Pinchuk's foundation. All right, so this is in 2017. While there, he met with then Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko and a top prosecutor in the country, Yuri Lutsenko, who peddled baseless conspiracy theories subsequently relayed by Giuliani at the center of the impeachment inquiry. All right, so we know where to plug Pinchuk in to that timeline. Schoen, for his part, has criticized Democrats' determination to investigate Trump, really, and possibly remove him from office. That'll help your candidate. I have consistently argued that it would be a profound mistake for Democrats to be provoked into pursuing the impeachment of President Trump. He wrote in a Fox News column 2 days before Mueller's congressional testimony on his investigation and 2 days before the Trump call with Ukraine's president that eventually led to the impeachment inquiry. It is clear that voters are tired of and frankly desensitized to the continuous investigations of Trump, his presidential campaigns, and his administration, Schoen claimed. So there's his punditry value for you. Bloomberg, in all likelihood, knows what he's buying, but is buying it anyway. And that might be all you need to know about Mike Bloomberg. Quite honestly, that statement should get you dropped by any Democratic presidential candidate. But remember, he's a weird kind of Democratic candidate. Not a Democrat, for one thing. And not, not particularly attractive, I think, to the vast majority of Democratic voters. But maybe I'll be proven wrong. Pinchuk isn't the only former client of Schoen's whose work creates tantalizing and complicated political implications for Bloomberg's run. Let's find out about this. One more paragraph to go. Schoen also has done work for Trump himself. That is also going to be a big selling point, I am sure. Let's see. Have we gone past our break here? Or I think we have. I think we're into it, and I missed the signal because I moved the alarm. But okay, let's shut things down then. And I guess we need to have I guess we've missed our cue for our music. Is that right, or is that now? Now I'm confused, but I think so. I think we're actually in the break and coming back in just a minute. Okay, so we'll cut it off for now. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I think we may actually have accidentally gotten that one correct, but my timer was out of position and I couldn't tell how long it had been ringing and was momentarily baffled by what was happening. But okay, I think we got it right. Where do we leave off? Yes, Pinchuk isn't the only former client of Schoen's whose work creates tantalizing and complicated political implications. He did work for Trump himself back when the president was in the real estate business and not the electoral politics business. Schoen advised Trump on a 150-story commercial and residential project that was to be dubbed Trump City, but never actually materialized. So good work there, Doug Schoen. You saw that project all the way through to non-happening, non-completion. Reflecting on that venture this past year, Mark Penn, Schoen's former polling partner, recalled that Schoen had trouble collecting payment for his work and had to largely settle for shuttle tickets that then became worthless. Wow, okay. Was that like a long time ago, back when, is that from back in the days when Trump owned the former Eastern Airlines Trump shuttle, and he ended up getting, he settled for getting paid in free Trump shuttle tickets, and then the Trump shuttle shut down and he didn't get to use the tickets. That is some good business. Doug Schoen, way to go. A lot of consultants run into problems like this, I'm sure, but what a track record. Okay, you can have him, Bloomberg. He's all yours. And, wow, Trump City, eh? Clever. What sort of work would Schoen have done for that? Was he polling people about what do you think about the development of something called Trump City, and if we put 150, apartment buildings here, would that be okay with you? Or was he like strategically, I think you ought to build it this high and paint it gold? I'm curious, what would you even get Doug Schoen to do for you on that front? I don't know. All right, let's see. Other stories of interest that we ought to bring up and discuss. I guess we'll save a few of these fun things for discussion with Joan. Let's see. We've got, there's Mark Penn, since we had just mentioned him. Why don't we bring that up? Since we're just grilling Doug Schoen about these things. And remember, let me just open that up again and give you the last paragraph of that. Remember that we're saying that Schoen has this difficulty of having previously worked for Trump, possibly a long time ago. And then again, reflecting on that venture last year, Mark Penn, Schoen's former polling partner, recalled that Schoen had trouble collecting payment for his work, had to settle largely for shuttle tickets that then became worthless. So is Mark Penn any better at punditing or predicting these things or navigating these waters? The answer, of course, is no. And if you don't remember why, we'll just give you this new reason why. Washington Post reporting Josh Dawsey, again, he's in a lot of these things, and Jacqueline Alemany, how would you pronounce that? It's Alemany. It could be Alemany, like I'm going to have many ales when I go to the bar later on. I don't know. I don't believe we've called her name before, but she's the lead on this one. Josh Dawsey getting second billing on this. Former Clinton strategist Mark Penn counsels President Trump on impeachment. And it wasn't Nixon's impeachment or Clinton's impeachment. It's his own. That's happening now. So I don't know which one you take. I guess if both are on fire, you walk away. All right. As President Trump's White House battles impeachment, he's turned to a familiar face last week. Mark Penn, one of President Bill Clinton's top strategists. Penn visited the Oval Office for more than an hour last Monday, 3 people familiar with the meeting said, and provided polling data and impeachment advice for the president. And now, of course, the president has since come out saying the polling is overwhelmingly against impeachment. So either just straight up lying again, always a possibility, or Penn doesn't know what he's doing. That's also a possibility, and gave him bad numbers, or maybe he gave him good numbers. I don't know. Penn reassured Trump that he would not be removed from office, according to people familiar with the meeting, and encouraged him to travel the country as Clinton did when he was fighting impeachment over 20 years ago, officials said. That may or may not be good advice. He's not nearly the skilled politician, let's say, that Bill Clinton is, but that may just be my view. I would happily have, I guess, maybe not happily accepted money from him. But then again, the idea, would I be happy to accept money from Donald Trump? Well, that's two different things. Would I be willing to say that I was due payment from Donald Trump? No. Would I get that money? That's also probably a big no. So I'm not sure what exactly Mark thinks he's getting out of this. But by the way, great advice. Oh, I don't think you'll be removed from office because there's more Republicans in the Senate than there are Democrats. Well, that's $1 million advice. And you'll probably be paid eventually. You'll actually collect about what that advice was worth, I would say. Vice President Pence and White House counselor Kellyanne Conway were present for the meeting. Penn was escorted by Andrew Stein, a longtime Trump friend from New York, who recently wrote a Wall Street Journal op-ed calling for former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, to replace Pence on the 2020 election ticket. That's a bit of an awkward thing if Pence is in the meeting. But, Pence probably not the type to speak up very much about those things. Penn recommended that Trump, quote, stay focused on the substance, unquote, of the allegations surrounding trading access and aid for political favors from Ukraine, according to Stein, and not respond to everything. I'm not sure what he thinks. I don't know what his definition of the substance is, but we'll see. Trump has thus far eschewed that approach. So I guess now it's contrary advice. So sometimes people pay big bucks for that. The president has sent dozens of tweets attacking Democrats for what he characterizes as waging an unfair battle against him, and is fixated on the impeachment process, according to current and former aides and everybody who reads the newspaper or Twitter. while attacking his opponents as do-nothing Democrats in all caps. You've got to govern. Penn told Trump of how Clinton handled the impeachment process, according to a person with knowledge of the meeting who, like others, spoke on condition of anonymity. Penn didn't. He made sure everybody knows that he was there. Penn had the task of measuring public support for Clinton during that impeachment process and crafted the administration's response to allegations of Clinton's extramarital affair with, you-know-who, White House intern Monica Lewinsky. A comment here from Mike Musson who says, Trump has polls that have been corrected by Sharpie. And how long until Trump gets Penn and Pence confused? That's true. He may have thought he was talking to Pence. Bring me, what's his name? Mark Pence. Could be. Mike Pence. Mark Penn. That is a distinct possibility. It's a good point there, Mike. All right. The White House visit by the former Clinton loyalist suggests that Trump is seeking information from a wide variety of sources as he battles what might be the biggest political challenge of his presidency. You would think that would probably be the biggest one. Officials say Trump has called a variety of TV personalities, lawmakers, and longtime New York and Palm Beach friends for advice on how to survive the investigation. And I'm sure he's done it on an unsecure phone, so anyone with a radio scanner can listen in. But Democrats are pressing ahead with their case that Trump misused his office by pressing Ukraine to open investigations. You know what's happening here. The House Judiciary Committee announced Tuesday that it would hold its first hearing on the issue on December 4th. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff spearheaded the first phase of the hearings when several administration officials and career diplomats testified publicly, and his panel plans next week to submit a report of its findings to the Judiciary Committee. In a brief interview, Penn said repeatedly that he was not working for Trump. It's the second time I have ever met with the president. I'm not counseling him. I'm not advising him. Penn said he discussed with Trump only publicly available data, but declined to be specific on his advice. I don't get into presidential meetings. And I wish that was really true. You should not be allowed into presidential meetings. Although I guess if anybody's going to give advice to Trump, I guess I would have picked Penn and maybe Schoen too and say they're terrible at giving advice. They don't know what the hell's going on. Please listen to these men. So I don't know what he's trying to say here, or what he thinks we're going to take away from this. He's met with the president. He's not counseling or advising. I understand that he hasn't done any specific polling for him. I understand what that means. I'm only discussing publicly available data. But if you're discussing publicly available data, why are you discussing it if not to counsel or advise him? I really have no idea what that's supposed to mean. Well, I do. It's supposed to be taken at face value, and people will just walk away and say, they're not having that sort of relationship. They are. He just doesn't want anybody to know that because he might be able to work for maybe someone like Bloomberg. Maybe he would rejoin with Schoen on that one, and he doesn't want Bloomberg to be damaged by his association with advising Trump. So he'll just gaslight us on it, I guess. Trump seems outwardly confident in his re-election prospects, despite the growing impeachment turmoil. Polls have shown public support for impeachment holding steady. CNN survey, okay, well, you know that story. We discussed it with Greg. At last week's meeting, Trump displayed a campaign map for participants showing how he won in 2016. Gee, I'm sure Mark Penn has never seen that. A favorite activity of his when he has visitors in the Oval Office. He pointed to a handful of battleground states that he captured in 2016, expressing a bullish optimism about his chances in 2020. Stein also said that he buried the hatchet with Pence during the extended meeting after calling on Trump to replace Pence with Haley this year to win over moderate suburban women. I told Pence the president wants him on the ticket, and that's that, Stein said. I don't think it's really up to you, though, Stein. The president had previously told Pence he did not appreciate Stein's op-ed suggesting Haley for the ticket and did not support his writing it, the White House officials said. I guess that's probably a lie, too. Democrats were quick to criticize Penn, a former pollster and top aide to the campaigns of Bill and Hillary Clinton. Many Democrats have bitterly attacked the strategist for arguing that the party should move to the center and blamed Penn for losing the 2008 primary strategy, for the losing primary strategy that saw Hillary Clinton defeated by Barack Obama. More recently, Penn has become a Fox News regular and sided with Trump allies when he demanded the end to special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian interference in the election. All that bootlicking on Fox News finally paid off for Mark Penn. David Axelrod, President Obama's top strategist, tweeted of the news that Penn had visited Trump. He's finally a White House insider again. This is not the first time that one of the architects of Bill Clinton's campaign and impeachment strategy has visited with Trump. The president met with Penn in February to discuss 2020 strategy and the Mueller investigation, aides said. Penn has served as a Microsoft executive as well. Let me pick up the phone here. Where's my phone? How come? Why doesn't it not want to give me the opportunity to pick up this phone call here? What's going on? I've now missed Joan's phone call. What's up with Skype these days? My Skype has shut down again. All right, let's see. We'll bring it back up again and have her call again. I'll have to just send her the message. Okay. Well, we'll have her do it again here. Pardon the interruption. Interesting that terminates these days without notice to me. Oh, and I guess I'll have to go up and make sure that Skype is reactivated in the what do we call it? Audio hijack situation here as well. All right, let's finish up the article we were reading here. Penn has served as a Microsoft executive and a corporate consultant in recent years. In a 2017 op-ed in the Washington Post. Here we are, and we can answer the phone for Joan again. Hi, Joan. Sorry about that.
Fine.
Yeah, well, you know how it is on these pre-Thanksgiving days. I was just wrapping up talking about everyone's favorite guy, Mark Penn, who, after discussing Doug Schoen as well. But just reminding everybody by way of wrapping up this article that he worked for Microsoft and wrote a 2017 op-ed entitled How to Fix the Democratic Party, which I'm sure we all took the advice of. He argued that moderate candidates had the best chance of winning in the 2018 midterms. How'd that go? Trump is not personally close to Penn, who worked for Stein as his pollster in the 1980s, but admires his political strategy and TV appearances, often praising Trump. Officials said he knows how to get money out of him, or, well, the promise of money out of him. No one knows how to actually get money out of Trump. Trump also asked Penn about his Harvard Capps-Harris survey, according to Stein. I don't see much else in here of great interest. Penn previously co-founded a polling firm with Doug Schoen, whose idiocy was chronicled in the last article we read, who recently dropped his representation of a Ukrainian oligarch, that's what we read about, and signed on this week for Mike Bloomberg's presidential bid, according to the Daily Beast. We read that. So, okay, we're caught up on those two idiots and what they're doing. I don't know what that strategy is all about, but I guess they're just New York guys who figure if there's no soul at the center of Donald Trump, maybe we can go in there and generate some billable hours, and people will think we have money in our bank accounts again if they don't know that Donald Trump never pays anyone.
Right.
They might be fooled into thinking that. Okay.
Bloomberg, however, does pay.
Yeah, that's true. So maybe Schoen is the smarter of the two at the moment.
I would believe so.
Bloomberg rather than Trump. All right. I do wonder what motivates people sometimes about things. I guess it's possible that their whole business is about making people believe that they know how to win for anybody, that they know how to control politics, and this only helps boost that. Although how they ever, are going to get back on track getting paid by Democrats when they're consulting with Trump, I don't know.
I don't think that they're counting on getting paid by Democrats anymore.
I guess not. There aren't that many.
Certainly Bloomberg isn't a Democrat.
That's true, so that doesn't count. I don't know. It's just an odd thing.
Did you see the story yesterday, all of his donations to Republicans over the years?
No, but that does make sense.
It lends credence to what Greg was talking about this morning, that really this is Bloomberg running just in case Elizabeth Warren gets the nomination. This is the stop Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders since he's still up there.
All right.
The two of them, Sanders and Warren, are Democrats that he has never given to.
Yeah.
He donated to George W. Bush. From, I think it was 2004 to 2014. If I'm remembering the numbers correctly, he never donated to a Democrat.
Okay. That's not so good.
No.
Yeah, I have a New York Times report on that.
He endorsed Scott Brown and fundraised for Scott Brown.
Yeah, okay. Another huge
and,
favorite.
Of course, Susan Collins.
Oh, well, that is deeply troubling.
And between personal and PAC donations, gave something like $10 million to keep Pat Toomey in the Senate in 2016.
Yeah. Not a good
There's
record
a
as a
theme
Democrat.
here.
Yeah. He's a Republican.
It is protecting Mike Bloomberg from having to pay taxes with the Democratic Senate.
Yeah, I guess so. And, of course, his electoral record doesn't include any time as a Democrat either.
No.
So, there's evidence. Like, you would pile that up and say, I think that guy might be a Republican.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess the trick is now, well, there's reports every day of people who are Republicans who are renouncing their party membership and switching to the Democratic Party because of Trump. So, I mean, it's possible.
It's possible.
But most of those people also weren't responsible for millions of dollars of donations to arch conservatives.
Yeah.
So
I think it really does all come down to his taxes.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I mean, what else would you be occupied with if you were a billionaire? That's a big deal for you. Money is obviously extremely important to him.
Yeah, because also he was making sure that the New York State Senate stayed Republican.
Oh, yeah. Although the New York State Senate can stay Republican even when it's Democratic.
True.
So
doesn't need a lot of help from Bloomberg.
Right. But okay.
And
that's a big deal for him.
Keeping Peter King in office. He donated and held fundraisers for Peter King last year.
Yeah.
2018.
That's pretty recent. Okay. Yeah. Bad news. All right. Well, I didn't like the guy. And now I'm really convinced.
Yeah.
I was almost there for Bloomberg. I never saw that in my future. Okay. Man. What else is up? Let's see. We have a break from the hearings this week, so that's good news for you, for your personal sanity, I'm sure.
It's good news for my personal sanity. It's good news for Democrats, because who's going to be watching public hearings the day before Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
Taking a break makes sense. What I'm not sure makes sense is the rushed go ahead with articles of impeachment. And I think, there's no reporting of this, but reading between the lines, it seems like there might be some conflict between Schiff, Pelosi, Nadler. How this goes. I think, again, reading between the lines from what Schiff has said, he would be all for continuing the hearings, getting more evidence, getting more depositions, and continuing. And I think Pelosi is pushing for an end to it. And I think Pelosi is wrong, personally.
Yeah.
I could be entirely wrong. But
yeah, I don't know. We haven't had it going on long enough to really be fully certain. Say, for instance, if you wanted to rely on polling data, it looks like it has given the popularity of impeachment and removal a slight bump, but then again, so did Pelosi's announcement that she was okay with going forward with the hearings, which she might, characterize as, well, when I announced my strategy, we got a bump. And when I announce my new part of my strategy, we'll get another bump. Which would be hard to disprove.
I think it's short-sighted looking for the bumps. For one thing, you need to put this in historical context and look at the polling against Nixon and Clinton on impeachment. And far, far more people are behind impeaching and removing Trump at this stage than were with previous presidents.
Yes. I mean, this is a historical anomaly. It just doesn't happen that often. Well, first of all, impeaching a president, but having that much support for it at the outset is unusual.
Yes, and the support for it seems steady. It hasn't gone below, 44, 45, 50, depending on the polls that you're looking at, percent. That's a solid group of people who say, yes, he's got to go. That's unchanging.
And it has been unchanging for a long time. I guess you would have to make that observation in discussion with Pelosi if she thought that, that what she was doing, what she was doing and what she announced did have an effect, and we saw it. But polling on the popularity of impeaching and removing Trump was pretty high before the Ukraine story broke.
Right.
So, that is to say, the vast majority of support for impeaching President Trump now, post-Ukraine hearings, was already there, not only before the Ukraine hearings, but that what it means is that there are a lot of people who want him impeached for other reasons besides Ukraine, which a rushed impeachment process would leave aside purposefully.
Yes.
So that ought to be.
And Schiff's talked about, well, we should be looking at the stuff from the Mueller report. There's stacks of obstruction issues there. And I think from the Senate perspective, Senate Democrats, knowing that, Mitch McConnell can do anything with the rules, essentially, and he only needs 51 votes to do it, and the likelihood that they can peel away 4 Republicans, 1 or 2, maybe, not likely, 4, pretty much impossible. What Senate Democrats would like is to have the strongest possible case made. They want piles and piles and piles of evidence to show just how craven Senate Republicans are when they go through the motions, do their already agreed upon with Trump 2 weeks of hearings, and then acquit.
Yeah.
In fact, Senator Patty Murray yesterday, who is in Senate leadership, tweeted out a statement she made saying, as the impeachment inquiry moves forward, it's important that the House gathers all the facts about President Trump and his associates' actions. This is not about politics. It's about maintaining our nation's security and defending the rule of law, which is true.
Yes.
Ultimately, what this comes down to is, yes, you have to at least do the inquiry and the hearings into this guy because the Constitution demands it.
Yeah.
The continuation of our republic as a republic demands it. At the same time, there are politics. And it's going to be easier for Democrats to retake the Senate if the world sees just how in the bag for Trump Senate Republicans are.
Yes. And that, I guess piling up all the evidence would help and do that. It would piling up all that evidence on more charges than just what stemmed from Ukraine would. They'll still do it, but it would at least make it more ridiculous looking to see the Republicans, put a cap on the time for the trial at the outset and say 2 weeks is the most we'll allow for discussing this, and then at the to have at the end of the 2 weeks, we haven't even gotten to the Mueller report yet.
By the way, they've already negotiated that with Trump.
Is that right? Okay.
Last week we had the luncheon with Trump and Susan Collins and Mitt Romney and a few others.
Yes.
That didn't touch on impeachment, really. They talked about it a little bit, but, they're jurors. They can't be talking with Trump. Meanwhile, there were something like 8 Republican senators, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, a bunch of others, talking with White House staff about the details for the hearing, which they pretty much agreed, it's 2 weeks. we've got to do 2 weeks because it makes us look like we're taking it seriously. But it's a foregone conclusion. You're going to be acquitted.
Well, yes. I mean, we expected that they would go into that with that in mind. Interesting that they settled it already. And just interesting, of course, jurors negotiating with the defendant about how long they'll be allowed to deliberate on his case is pretty amazing. 2 weeks, I don't know. I mean, I guess that does, probably somebody thought, no, that does seem like we took it seriously. But it's also, that's usually the increment of time that Trump shouts out anytime he's asked how long something's going to take. Very soon. 2 weeks.
Right.
Okay. All right. We'll do it in 2 weeks. All right. We'll take our short break and be right back. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Joan McCarter with us here for our pre-Thanksgiving show. Lots to discuss, so we've got lots of directions we may go. What's weighing most heavily on your mind, if anything? I know you might be trying to put those things out of your mind for a day or two, but
it'd be nice.
Yes, no one can really avoid it, and I don't know what Thanksgiving discussion is like around your table, but I imagine occasionally people mention politics.
Well, yes.
Yeah, I would think so, right?
A very political household.
Of course.
There are very, very rarely disagreements.
Yes.
Very rarely.
Okay, well, that's at least pleasant. You can keep things all on one side. Again, imagine you guys foregoing political discussion for any reason, but
no,
you never know. Some people have rules.
Not in my family. We're
right. Okay.
We're rabid. We're rabid lambs.
Remember, that's a real thing. So what might be on the discussion agenda then? Everyone will have ideas about what to bring up. What are you working on in the last day or two before the break, or?
Well, there's a fun local story, a good local story that having worked for Medicaid expansion, I didn't really work on it. I went to a few meetings and got a few signatures.
Okay.
But I don't know if you caught this story last week. BYU Idaho had told its students that they could not use expanded Medicaid to fulfill their health insurance requirement for enrollment. I
saw something about it. I didn't read the full story, but yeah, what was that exactly?
Which was kind of a big deal. The county that Brigham Young, Idaho is in is one of the highest need counties in the state, where they had the highest potential enrollment in Medicaid expansion. Okay. And people going to college need affordable health care. And for BYU students, the university provided insurance was something like $1,500 a semester. Mm-hmm. It was really high. So, hundreds, if not thousands of people were going to have to drop out. Yeah. Because they couldn't pay that. Medicaid for Idaho, the Reclaim Idaho group, the grassroots group that got Medicaid extension on the ballot and got it approved.
Yes.
Raised an immediate stink. That bubbled up through local news and got to the pages of the New York Times, thanks to reporter Sarah Cliff, who's fantastic. Right. If you're interested in healthcare and aren't following Sarah Cliff, you're missing out.
Yeah, I don't know what you're reading. If you're not reading her, I don't know what you're getting.
It hit the New York Times, and BYU Idaho changed its mind yesterday.
Okay.
So
I did see that it was reversed. But yeah, I don't think I realized that. And I saw that BYU was involved, and I don't think it even registered with me that it was in Idaho that it was going on. Otherwise, I would have known right away to say, "Oh, tell me about that."
Yes, they have a second campus in Idaho.
Okay. Well, yeah, that, I think news to me anyway. But the bigger news, of course, was what was swirling around with the Medicaid issue. So,
Yes.
All right, I'm glad of that. I'll pick up that Sarah Cliff piece and include it for people to read on the background of the situation. Did it come out? Was it her article? I guess then that may have moved. So I don't know if she updated it, whether or not it has the reversal in it or not. But
No. Well,
Okay.
she may have updated. I haven't seen it since they made the reversal.
But
She's
she's-
probably
yeah.
updated it.
So it's her highlighting of it that actually focused the national attention.
Oh,
on it.
well, and focus the national attention. Medicaid expansion has gotten to be a thing.
Yeah, and Idaho, that was a
nationally.
big deal too.
You know, everybody's been watching all of the states, and it was a huge deal that first Maine got it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they didn't get it. They passed it by citizens' initiative, and their crazy governor
right.
fought it for
That's
as
true.
long as he was in office. But then Nebraska, Utah, Idaho all passed it in 2018 through citizens' initiative.
That much,
All
right.
to varying degrees of success. I mean, every state has tried to find ways to put restrictions on it. Including saying you can't use it if you want to go to college.
Yeah, I mean, what was the basis for that? Did they have any reason to believe that people would accept that as a real directive, a thing that people could do?
No.
Okay. It's just
It made absolutely no sense because people who qualified for Medicaid traditionally certainly were able to attend BYU.
yeah. I
They
don't know.
accepted that as their insurance coverage previous to the political expansion of Medicaid. The evil Obamacare is the only thing I can figure out.
Yeah, I
I
guess.
said no all of a sudden.
I don't know. So, all right, they came up with that idea out of nowhere. I guess someone must have thought that would fly, but to what? Yeah, I don't know what BYU would think the advantage was in it. Although someone somewhere must have had some numbers and say, we don't get reimbursed enough, perhaps. I don't know.
Well,
But-
they saw it as an opportunity to make more money,
I guess.
I guess,
But, yeah.
with their insurance contract.
Yeah. Just
That's
yeah.
all I can figure.
That's the only thing you can think of, except, yeah. And then I guess if you do the analysis, hey, nobody can pay that. Oh, well, then we won't make any more money.
And you're going to lose students, and you're going to lose the tuition that they are paying.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, I guess they figured that out in the day or so after
It
the
took
thing
a
really
little.
exploded.
Yeah. But I've got to give credit to local news. Idaho Press has been all over it, and has been terrific. So
Excellent.
it did bubble up to the New York Times, and making it a national issue, I think, probably hastened the decision. But they were getting blasted for it in the state too.
Well, good.
Which,
Well
yay,
done.
Idaho.
All right. Well, good job. Good outcome here. Let's see. Congressionally speaking, I've seen a couple of stories that might have caught your attention. Including, well, let's see. On a smaller scale, I see the House Oversight Panel is suing Barr over a completely different issue. Now, we're suing everybody over subpoenas, but the new leadership of the Oversight Panel suing over subpoenas not honored in the investigation into the citizenship question on the census.
Right.
issue.
They're also subpoenaing Ross in that one.
Yes, right. And Ross might even...
Wilbur Ross.
Yes. might even
Commerce
still be alive.
Secretary. Napper.
Right? It's probably our napper in chief.
Corrupt as you know what.
Yes, and all right, so they have their own set of subpoenas that they haven't honored, and we did get a ruling, for what it's worth, from the district court the other day that Don McGahn has got to testify that the claim of just absolute immunity for the president's counselors didn't fly in district court. They'll be appealing that possibly forever. And that may play into, some people were saying that may play into what Nancy Pelosi was deciding with respect to impeachment, that hanging on to actually play this out in court and finally force the testimony of Don McGahn, waiting for Don McGahn's testimony to be forced and only then moving forward with impeachment would push the schedule back probably to as late as next summer before you actually got his testimony, and that maybe she just didn't want things to linger that long for whatever, her calculation being that for some reason people wanted this addressed now and not later. It seems to me like a great campaign issue, but she has a
I think it's a
idea.
great campaign issue, and I think Senate Democrats see it as a great campaign issue. I mean, when the foregone conclusion already is Mitch McConnell's going to blow it off, why not make it as politically painful for him to do as possible?
Yeah.
But, you know, she could also be trying to exert some sort of weird pressure on Roberts, Chief Justice John Roberts.
Okay.
Took me a while to get his name.
What's the Chief Justice? What's that guy who's supposed to occupy
I was
the most
thinking
respected
Tom Roberts,
position?
and I thought, no, Thomas? No, that's another one. Anyway.
Yeah. You forget who these guys are occasionally. They're just
who's
going to
be presiding over the impeachment hearings in the Senate.
What would the pressure be, you think?
And who's going to be having to decide ultimately on all of these subpoenas? Who's going to have to take that? I think it was a 120-page ruling in the district court saying, no, I'm sorry, the president is not king.
Yeah.
He's going to have to be considering that appeal. So, you know, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's, I think I did see that theory floated now, and I had forgotten about how that would work. But the theory being, if the administration, such as it is, insists on appealing the McGahn ruling and every other ruling, and appealing it to the circuit court in D.C., and then presumably losing there as well, and appealing to the Supreme Court, or even having the circuit court say, no, this is a pretty solid ruling, we're not going to touch this. It doesn't help us resolve any conflicts at the D.C. circuit level. Then appealing the refusal to take the appeal to the Supreme Court, and then a question of whether or not they would take it up. I guess, and then having it taken up, and the risk of having 5 lunatics say, yeah, everything we know about the state of the law is no longer true. You just put it all to Roberts directly in his capacity as presiding officer in the impeachment proceedings and say, the circuit or the district court ruled that he had to testify. We want his testimony now. We didn't have a chance to take it earlier in the hearings in the House because the case was pending, and then put it all on Roberts to say, you know, if you really entertain any thoughts of, you know, a legacy for history of being a reasonable guy who actually stood for the rule of law, you're going to have to rule directly on this. And here you can do it without having to deal with Clarence Thomas and Brett Kavanaugh and all the rest. Just do it your way. Is
it's
that
a
what you thought?
stretch. Yes.
That is a stretch. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's a theory. But,
it's a theory.
Yeah, I mean, you have to believe in, you have to be one of the people who buy the, well, John Roberts is for real theory. Right. That he really
and
is.
And we have slim evidence for that. We have the original Affordable Care Act decision.
Yeah, that's kind of it.
Where he split the baby, and that's pretty much it.
So not too convincing from your perspective, I guess.
No, it's not.
Okay. Yeah, I guess the only other thing I could add to this is Pelosi was around the last time we had to deal with this, last time a Democratic House had to sue to compel testimony, and knows how long it takes to get that done, and that typically what ends up happening is by the time the courts really finally say, yeah, you have to testify, it's too late and it doesn't do you any good.
Yeah.
So, there is that, although last time around it was against the George W. Bush administration, which was on its way out thanks to the two-term limit, and that's not the case here. And that's pretty important because, as it turns out, the worst president in history of the world is standing for re-election right now.
Yeah. And the world kind of feels like it's teetering in the balance.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just our country.
Yes, true. All right.
So
they
that's
might be
a
looking
cheery
to us.
thought for
Sure.
the holidays.
Pass the cranberry sauce. Why don't you? So, yeah, that's true. Other cheery thoughts. I see Ian Millhiser writing at Vox about Brett Kavanaugh's latest opinion should terrify Democrats. And
trust me, Ian, we are all terrified over
okay.
Kavanaugh.
All right. Noted. Joan says
he did post this
terrified.
story as even more important than Ukraine or Russia or impeachment. And yeah,
in a way.
But we are all aware of how dangerous Brett Kavanaugh is. We are all aware that the regulatory state is on its last legs.
Yes.
What I'm more interested in thinking about is what we do about it if we get a Democratic president and Senate.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we've thrown out some theories. Any changes in those in those thoughts? Are you a court packing kind of person, or reluctant, or impeached Kavanaugh, or what's
I am
your
an impeached Kavanaugh person.
I'm for that.
There's plenty of fodder for that. I mean, how many times do we have likely perjury in all of his Senate confirmation hearings?
Yes, several.
Lots.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I have my doubts about whether or not everyone else comes around to that, but it would be useful, to say the least, and warranted. But that doesn't always
it would definitely
cut
be
it.
warranted. But I'm all for looking at what ways we have possible for reforming the court. I'm generally not a term limit supporter.
Yeah.
In the case of the Supreme Court and maybe the appeals courts, I'm wavering. I'm not so sure there. One thing that absolutely, the bare minimum that has to be done is that the Supreme Court is going to have to be reformed to abide by the Federal Judicial Code of Ethics.
Yes. I think that's a good point.
It isn't. That's out. I mean, the idea apparently was that the Supreme Court people would be so elevated, so above us all that you didn't even have to think about putting that restriction on them.
Yes. That's funny. I mean, in hindsight. That seems ridiculous.
So at the very minimum, you have to end that so that they can't go and do things like speak in front of the Federalist Society, have their spouses be the head of the Tea Party.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's true. I mean, that would seem like a kind of a no-brainer to use as part of the platform. I mean, who's going to fight hard about, no, we have to exempt people from ethics codes? I mean, Republicans will do it. It's just they're not going to take any particular glee in doing it proactively on their own. You can force them to do it, and that's good. You're going to steer that conversation. So, good campaign issue to hold on to.
Yep.
Let's see.
It's not a great campaign issue. For some reason, the Supreme Court is not a great campaign issue for Democrats.
I don't know why that
frustrates me no end.
Yeah.
Republicans certainly focus on it entirely.
Sure. It's Mitch McConnell's reason for being. I mean,
yes.
He says so every time. Yeah, I don't know. People have made attempts to focus Democratic interest on it, but I don't know. I don't know what people would be waiting for. I think it's doing better, but yeah, it's still not central to
No.
Democratic political thought. Let's see. There was another an issue that you mentioned to me during our break that sounded intriguing because I'm not up to speed on it about secret trade talks with the UK, which is not something we usually hear about. You don't hear about secrets typically, but what? Why are we having
what?
And what's it
The
doing?
Trump administration was in talks with the May administration since Brexit, since the Brexit decision, on a trade deal to help ease the country's Brexit. To give them the alternative trade deal to point to say, look, we don't need the European Union, we have the United States. And this week, I think today, Jeremy Corbyn released declassified trade talk papers that show the National Health Service as one of the things on the table in those trade talks with the Trump administration. It was with the May administration. I have absolutely no doubt that Boris Johnson picked that ball up and is running with it.
Oh, yeah. Right. But
in these talks anyway, in these secret talks. But yes, the United States is demanding basically the destruction of the National Health Service so that American manufacturers of medical devices and pharmaceuticals can open up another market, essentially, can get more money out of the UK by taking out price controls.
All right, because at first blush, I thought, well, what would that even be an issue in any talks? But certainly trade talks, why would Britain say, yeah, sure, anybody want to opine on our national health system and tell us whether to scrap it or not? Sure, let's talk. Like, what about sovereignty? Never mind that. But what would make it an interest in trade talks? But okay, I mean, that does give them a logical basis, I guess, in saying if we think that you're excluding our products and services from your market.
And also extending the patents on pharmaceuticals for U.S. companies in Britain.
Yeah. All right, well, they may have the leverage to do that. Of course, it would be disastrous for the English-speaking world, really, to take something like the National Health Service and say, where we ought to get our advice on reforming it is America, because their medical system is amazing. It's the best in the world. Wow.
We'll see if it becomes a campaign issue for them. It should become a campaign issue for them.
Yeah.
I mean, the NHS is a big enough deal that when we had the Olympics in London, in their opening ceremony, they did a whole bit based on the NHS.
Yeah. That's right.
That was one of the things included in their opening ceremony.
That is true. Has the Trump administration not, for instance, approached Canada in our renewed trade talks, trilateral trade talks, to replace NAFTA with NAFTA plus the name Trump on it? Are they leveraging that? Why are we not destroying their health
As
service?
far as I know, Canada said, no, you're not touching our health system.
Okay, so you got to have a willing partner in destroying. So so is a fair
and the Tories
takeaway.
would certainly be a willing partner in destroying it.
Okay, and particularly, I guess, Boris Johnson. Anything that would smooth the way to Brexit, I suppose, would be.
Yes, which I think was where the May administration was probably coming from. Mm-hmm. She was doing her darndest to make Brexit happen.
Yes.
Her not very competent darndest.
Yeah, well, that was a tough job, certainly, and I don't know if she was a great believer in it herself.
I get the sense that no, she wasn't.
No.
But
she felt like she needed to do the job.
From looking at it from across the ocean, and I'm not sure.
Yeah. Interesting that I guess one way of thinking about it is I'm not a great believer in this, perhaps, but I have a duty to the country that, having allegedly anyway voted in favor of Brexit, I need to deliver this. but I don't think it's politically wise and maybe not good for our political party, and certainly not for me because I'm going to end up getting chucked out. But I don't know. I mean, it's
that was the sense that you always got from her.
Yeah, it's
I don't know
weird.
that she ever said it out loud.
No. We do have that problem here, though, of course, with our conservative politicians figuring out what duty they owe to who, but choosing Trump
No,
over...
they have no trouble figuring that out. They've decided.
Well, that's true.
Trump.
I guess that's another different way of putting it. They have trouble figuring out the right answer.
Yes.
Or at least, as you say, yeah, no, they figured that out, too. They just said, I opt for the wrong one. That's a better way of putting it. I think you're right. Shouldn't give them the benefit of the doubt. Gee whiz, I don't understand. What should I be doing? No, I know.
You've got Kennedy going on national TV and saying, well, yeah, despite everything that the CIA and the FBI and the entire intelligence community told us, maybe it was Ukraine that intervened in 2016.
Yeah, I understand
you have a Republican senator who has been briefed by the CIA on this.
Yeah.
Going on national television and saying that.
That's bad.
Of course, you
news.
also have Mike Pompeo, who was head of the CIA when they had
we were just
when they
puzzling
did the
over
investigations, who went on national TV and said that. So
okay, so really, just anything goes. Whatever they need to say, they just
whatever they need to say to protect Trump.
I understood he backtracked somewhat, I guess, or maybe somebody put pressure on him to backtrack Kennedy. I don't know whether he means it. I don't know how convincing the backtracking was, but that was some statement that it was put point blank to him. Didn't he say, that he didn't hear the formulation?
He said that's an opinion. That Fiona Hill is entitled to her opinion.
Yeah, that was kind of an odd thing.
And it could have been Ukraine.
Right. Even though, I think so. Was Chris Wallace was saying to him, but it wasn't. Everyone says it was Russia.
Fox's Chris Wallace, by the way.
Yeah. Right. And he says no, but it also could have been Ukraine. I was curious. I thought the proper reaction to that is. We'll never see it, but, supposing he's on his way to work and on his way to the floor to vote in the Senate and the Capitol Police say, but you could also not be a senator, all right, and be an imposter, so I can't let you on the floor. Well, I am. Look, I'm wearing a pin. But you could also not be wearing the pin.
Oh, I like that idea.
You'll get fired.
Never going to happen, but I like it.
No, I think it would be fun, right? Just to see if the same level of logic works for these guys. But also you could not get paid for for being in the Senate. Also, this isn't your office or your staff. That's a possibility, right? Just trying to investigate everything that could have happened. All right. Well, no one will do that to him, I'm sure. And thinking about what else might be going on.
It's, we're trying to keep it kind of quiet. We're trying to ease folks out and have
Let
it be a pleasant holiday.
Right. Okay.
That's,
I think that's
hard. Great blockbuster story that we saw Chris Murphy yesterday talk about with the refusal of the Trump administration to extend aid in Lebanon to, let's see, and I don't know my parties well there.
I did see that there was a hold on more foreign aid.
Hold on more foreign aid that has not been justified by the Trump administration and is potentially even worse than what they've done in Ukraine. We've got a story from Mark on that out now, and I'm going to tweet that at the moment.
Okay, I will take a look for that one.
Withholding aid to Ukraine was illegal, but what Trump is doing in Lebanon could be even worse.
Wonderful.
Yes.
That's what we need. All right. Well, I will want to examine that one. I did see that story break the other day and trying to come up with some relationship between them. Why would the Trump administration be interested in holding that aid? I don't know if we know yet.
It's pulled all the funds that were supposed to go to the Lebanese armed forces. And the Lebanese armed forces are was trying to hold together to fight, to keep Hezbollah at bay, to try to moderate in Lebanon. And
that's not important.
Not informed at all.
Yeah, and more military aid for people fighting, terrorists, as we like to call them here in the United States. And apparently it doesn't, I don't know why they think that is a Republican thing to do, but I did remember that Lebanon was the place where we had the Prime Minister of Lebanon mysteriously kidnapped by the Saud royal family at some point. And he was forced to resign and then released with like ill-fitting clothes and weird shoes that didn't fit.
And there's always Russia on it too.
They've got to have something.
Because forces coming from Syria, including Russian forces, are looking into Lebanon. So.
Sure, why not? They just take over everywhere. All right, I'm going to have to examine that one. I guess I'll be preoccupied with that over Thanksgiving after all. But thank you for trying to release me to a pleasant holiday. I hope you have one as well. And thanks for coming by today. We got through a lot of
You're most welcome.
Interesting
we'll
things to
resume again next week.
Okay, we'll reconvene then. This hearing is adjourned. Thanks very much, Joan. Enjoy your holiday. We'll see you next week. Okay, time now for us to turn the microphone over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy.
From Daily
coming
Coos
up
Radio
next.
on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Much to come in the program. Coming up next, compromised Senator Marsha Blackburn doubled down on her Russian agitprop smear of Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. Ohio State Republican lawmakers introduced a bill that would impose the death penalty on women seeking an abortion. That one popping its ugly head up once again. All that and more coming up next. Stay tuned.